My name is Kycell, and this is the 6th chapter of the Forgotten Minotaur King. After my unceremonious abduction by the spidery eriadric couple Acantha and Gemin Gast, I was beginning to believe my quest for information about the mysterious Minotaur King Krunturg was over before it had even started. Not knowing what was to be my fate, nor my guardian Myrink, or my friend and scripter Ahani's, upon reaching my kidnapper's final destination, I was truly shocked to discover the recipients of my person would actually be my first solid leads in my investigation. The Ragazzi-Rospo, as they called themselves, were an amphibious toad and snake-like race similar to my home kingdom's Samazatory frogman ruler, His Royal Highness Ludope, but with numerous physical, and later I would learn metaphysical differences. While frogmen, like His Royal Highness and his heirs, had vibrant lime green skin, and with the exception of his eldest son, Dinge, a very diminutive stature, the Rospo hosted a variety of both warm and cool colors of skin, were generally quite tall and slim, as well as having small, horn-rimmed brows and large, intimidating slitted red eyes. This group in particular were fitted in dark suit jackets and matching vests, topped with trilbies and pork pie hats, most tilted low to hide parts of their faces, or to simply add to their intimidation factor. After the shock of one of my fellow captives, an elderly, violet-skinned humanoid in lilac robes, trying to unleash a fire scroll spell in an attempt to free us, the Rospo quickly dispatched of the man, leaving his young, dark-haired elven squire companion, who had been taken along with him, alone in the company of hostile strangers. During this rush of events, one of the Rospo had taken Ahani's journal of my deeds thus far. While ignoring the other goings-on, he completed his read and elatedly told me that these people actually knew my subject Krunturg the Minotaur King quite intimately. The man-spider, Gemin, who was the only one affected by the flame spell, doused himself and was back on all 4 feet. After seeing the remains of the elderly man, he angrily scuttled to our group and grabbed the closest hostage, who was, unfortunately, Ahani. With 2 right arms, or appendages, he hoisted her a few feet above the ground. No small feat, given Ahani's substantial size due to her half-dwarf heritage. He then clacked his mandibles quite menacingly. I quickly dove at Gemin Gast's feet and pleaded with him to let her go. I tried to make him aware that our group had no clue who this other troop was, and it wasn't any of ours that had cast the spell. I told him that Ahani was a good person and just a dictation transcriber. While this title only made Gemin look at me with a visage of pure incomprehension, it did alert the Rospo that had read Ahani's writing.
Whoa, what's going on over here? You wrote that stuff?
He gestured to Ahani with a strong and web-fingered hand. This caused Gemin to do a double-take at Ahani, and then proceed to ready her for a deadly bite, undoubtedly thinking the Rospo was as mad with her as he was himself. Unfortunately for him, he quickly found his head smashed into the marble flooring, as this apparently quite literary-minded Rospo was evidently displeased. This assault left Ahani unharmed, and left Gemin clicking and screeching in a fit of agony. The Rospo gangster then propped Ahani on her feet and brushed her off her shoulders with a wry grin. He then loudly snapped his fingers, and the rest of the surrounding crew lifted Myrink, myself, and the elven boy, who was weeping over the old man's corpse, to our feet, and then they proceeded to perform the same shoulder-dusting gesture as their leader had. One even held Gemin by his second pair of armpits as he slumped unconscious, but still alive. They gestured for us to follow them out of the central passage of what was now clearly a rather old but well-polished mansion. As we exited, from the corner of my eye, I curiously witnessed what looked like very traditional short Samazatori frogmen demurely enter and begin to clean the blood of the old man and Gemin from the walls and floors. As we walked further into the estate, its grandeur was continuing to amaze me. This was in spite of the actual goings-on I witnessed in the manor. We passed numerous rooms and chambers filled with various Ragazzi doing assorted illicit things. In one passage, we saw a pair of young men being hung from their ankles, while a topaz-skinned Rospo repeatedly hit them in the chest with balled fists. In another, we saw 3 well-dressed female Rospo inhaling what looked like some kind of hallucinogenic goo from a table, while several others laid unconscious in the corners of the room. Many other sights greeted us as we traversed.
Hey, I can't believe you guys ain't heard of Grunterg. Guys are living legend around here. Him and the boss go way back. Can't believe those idiota Rizal are acting like he don't exist. Hey, you say you're from Wolfkeep? Can't say I heard of that, but if you're writing a book, little lady, I can assure you we got the info.
He was directly addressing Ahani as we walked. All of our group, including Gemin, were far too afraid to talk. However, when it came to the topic of my research, an idiotic compulsion to clarify overcame me. I told him that I was the one writing a book. Ahani was simply transcribing all of the events as they occurred.
Well, doesn't that mean that she is writing the book, stupido? Hey, I'm just razzing your dick, bro.
He then gave what I assume was a playful tap to my sternum, but it nearly doubled me over in the strength as we continued to walk.
Hey, anyways, name's Skeech. That's Gooch, Skedge, Gulch, Creech, and Ronkonkoma. Hey, I just gotta be sure you ain't trying to pull something, gabish? Saw your little mouse friend over there eyeing that hog's leg. You don't step into the boss's house strapped. You got that?
He aimed a stern finger at my rink, wagging it with every word he said in her direction. Determined to keep calm, she stared him right in the eye and gave him a well-practiced
Hey, can you blame a mouseling for trying?
expression, complete with innocent head tilt.
Oh yeah, and sorry about your wizard friend, but what a stupid idiotic move. Bringing that Elizondian scroll crap in here? What the Hey, we're here.
We had reached a large, ornately carved door, studded with many different red jewels, and the words El Mundo y Mio embossed above the latch. Standing in front, nearly covering the towering door's width and height, was an enormous crocodile-headed Krogal, guarding the passage. Its incredibly wide and muscular body made it extraordinarily reminiscent of the royal Prince Dinge. The monstrous being leaned against the door in a rather casual manner, as it nonchalantly smoked a long, reedy pipe.
Hey, Opie, my beautiful, elegant sweetheart. Is the patron in this evening?
Skeech confidently approached, and the Krogal leaned forward, showing that her face was adorned with copious amounts of cosmetics, which may have failed to fully express her femininity, but she was striking nonetheless. She towered over all of our group as she closely examined everyone who wasn't a Rospo. Returning to her post, she grabbed the enormous door latch and opened it only slightly. Skeech and the rest then shepherded us into the darkly lit chambers. As we entered, we could hear low orchestral music seeping from a melody sphere somewhere in the room. Our vision was blurry from the large black clouds that filled the parlor. I was sure, however, this boss of the Rospo must have been smoking some sort of narcotic similar to the large Krogal outside. However, as my vision cleared, I could see it was the boss himself producing this miasma. A rotund, obsidian black toad-like gentleman sat slouched forward in a crimson fabricked bergère armchair. His eyes were a sweltering yellow that began to pain my own if I stared into them for too long. From his head and shoulders emitted the dark black mist, and from the shadows around his feet you could see numerous tentacles like appendages coiling outward from the floor and carpet. The eriadric Gemin quickly supplicated himself on all 8 spidery limbs before the boss. Myrink and Ahani seemed to have the same difficulty looking at him as I had, and aimed their eyes directly at the floor of the doorway. Skeech removed his pork pie hat and held it to his chest as he approached his boss.
Hey, Montasma! As you know, Gemin brought us the fresh warm bodies like you ordered. I know. I can't believe that old bag of Kenta hasn't eaten them already. But, turns out a couple of them are, from a school in Wolfkeep, was it? Yeah, they're, writing a book about something you'll never guess.
The boss, Montasma, leaned forward dramatically, showing a wide, smoky smile of ridged, tiny, sharp teeth all along his upper jaw.
So, yous guys are the ones digging up info on my old Grandberg. The Ragazzi-Rospo have put out all kinds of death warrants on yous. Would have expected someone more intimidating than a kid in a school jumper.
He leaned back in his bergère chair, causing it to tensely creak under his weight, and let out a long laugh, which all of the previously stoic Rospo, Creech, Gooch, Skedge, Gulch, and Ronkonkoma, joined in on, as if they had never heard the like before. He then cut them off with a snap of his fingers that caused a plume of black miasma to skewer the ceiling.
Hey, I got stories to tell yous about that old psychopathico bull. That business with the genie, his little pal Kind, what a cute little Vitello. Hell, even the time he almost got my boys and my beautiful door woman Opie killed in a war. Ha!
This was overwhelming. Everything I had wanted was right here. What could have been my darkest moment ended up being my salvation. I stood up and began to ask all of the questions that ran through my mind. What was he like? What happened to the Mendes family? And where was he now? But before I could get a second word out, I found myself suddenly wreathed from mouth to chest in thick black tentacles from nowhere, same as the ones I'd seen in the shadows beneath Montasma.
Hey, they don't teach manners in Wolfkeep. You do not interrupt a man while he's talking.
The tendrils began to drag me somehow through the seemingly solid floor, but stopped by the time I was up to my torso in the rug. Ahani looked horrified, but a hand from Myrink stopped her from reaching out to me.
Now, as I was saying, Grunthurg was a good pal of mine. But my good friend Gemin here brought you to me for work. You see, I run a lucrative business in this town, so the Rishon Assad let me and my men live freely despite past indiscretions. So you and this little crew work in one of my schneef vineyards for, let's say, a few months, and I'll let you get the full expose. We got a deal? I'll have you know that's much kinder than most get.
He released me from the tentacle's grasp, and I found myself on all fours in the center of the parlor. Nervously, I considered his words. This time frame would be disastrous for my novel work, but I could see little to no alternatives. With a sullen look to Ahani and Tristophe, both of whom gave me a dejected but resolute expression, I then turned to the young elfling squire who, I had no doubt, was completely lost in what was happening to him, while his fate was being wagered between complete strangers. With no better choice, I turned back to Montasma, still unable to look him in the eyes, and agreed to his terms. That was when Skeech stepped up to his boss.
Hey boss, I got a good idea. Why not send them to the vineyard in Goldenrod? No better security, and at least the kid gets to work where your old amico used to, do his business.
With a nod and a dismissive hand gesture, Skeech and his crew ushered us from the room, and once again past the intimidating Lady Krogal, Opie, who had seemingly been listening in on our exchange, as she was grinning at us with the pipe still between her jagged teeth, letting out a low guttural laugh and remindfully mouthing the words Krunturg to herself. We traveled back to the center passage of the manor, to the room where Gemin had heaved our belongings. Skeech and the boys hoisted Gemin's cart back on its wheels, and one of the Rospo, the one named Gulch, produced an enormous sack of gold coins and handed it to Gemin. Barely able to hold in 4 arms what the Rospo tossed to him with one, he gruntingly hoisted the sack into his cart, and with an elaborate bow to the Ragazzi and a stern, angry glare to us, he finally left our lives. I hoped with all of my heart he was leaving forever. The Rospo then took our belongings and leafed through them. They handed Ahani her books, and Skeech jovially gave Tristophe her guns, assuring her not to try anything funny, as it would only result in her death while in the manor or at the vineyard. The elfling was given a sword that looked far too unwieldy for him. My assumption was it belonged to the person killed by Gemin on the road before we arrived. He was also given the now-dead wizard's scrolls, which he eyed in a remorseful yet confused manner. He obviously had no use for them, so he left them in the bags. As I stated previously, my minor in anthropologic, mystical, and linguistical studies had allowed me to identify the parchment as Alizandian spell scrolls, so I elected to commandeer the scrolls for myself, as I had no doubt the Rospo would have just disposed of them otherwise. We were shown to a single large bedchamber, lined with cots, and told this was where we were to stay the night before being sent off in the morning. Before we resigned ourselves for the night, I asked if we could mail Ahani's transcripts thus far. The dangers of this quest were becoming clearer to me by the day, and if I was to become a laborer for the foreseeable future, I wanted all that I had endeavored so far to be preserved. Should something happen to me, at least my tale would have been able to reach someone prior to my demise. I suppose that's all a true scholar can hope for. Hi, my name is Matthew Lewis, and I do the voice of Kycell Bakshi along with all the additional voices in The Forgotten Minotaur King. I hope you enjoy the podcast and continue to listen into the future. If you want to support my content, please donate to my Patreon, Matthew Lewis Podcasts. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, Matthew Lewis Podcasts, all one word. Follow me on Twitter at Matthew Lewis P. Or leave a positive maximum star review on your podcast app of choice. If you found this podcast, I assume you're familiar enough with the genre to know how important reviews are to the survival of a channel. And I hope you recommend this to your friends. Or if you didn't like it, you could recommend it to your enemies, and I'll teach them a lesson. Keep it sleazy, folks, and thank you.